Welcome to the CX Exchange. My guest today is Martin O'Malley, the Commissioner of the Social Security Administration. Commissioner O'Malley, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
My honor, Jason. Glad to be with you.
As the lead keynote for our customer CX Exchange, we really appreciate you jumping in here talking about the good work that SSA is doing. And I went through some of the SSA's efforts over the last few years. And one thing that stood out to me as I went through the 21st Century Idea Act kind of report or update, and this is a couple years ago already, the efforts just continue to build, and you guys seem to be getting so much better in terms of how you're delivering services to citizens. So that's where I'm going to ask you to start. What some of those improvements, some of that progress, highlight some of those things that you have and SSA has really focused on over the last few years, specifically maybe the last 12 months.
Sure. I think this is a really challenging time for SSA because we are serving the highest number of customers we've ever served. And yet we're doing it with a level of staffing that's at a 27-year low. So the challenges that creates for us are many. But nonetheless, we have dialed up customer service in terms of our understanding of the customer journey, the personas, the person with a disability, the person who is applying for supplemental security income, the retiree. So all of these things are subject to research. All of these things are the pain points, if you will, the places that we have to focus upon in order to up our game in customer service, to make it easier for people, not harder, to go online to get services, to make it easier for people, not harder, to be able to get their tax information they need at tax time. So everything that we look at in terms of our workflows, our operations, we look at not only from the standpoint of the frontline workers and the people in the processing centers, we look at them from the perspective of the citizen, the people that hold the highest title in our republic. Are we making things easier for them or harder for them to access the benefits they've already paid for and that they've already earned?
You were sworn in back in December as SSA Commissioner. Over the last 4 or 5 months, what have you looked at? How have you focused on customer experience to really kind of drive these personas, these understanding of your customers better?
I would say, Jason, that probably the most important thing we've done, and I was mayor and I was governor of the state, but I have never had the honor to lead a group of men and women who do a better job than SSA does of collecting the data from the point of the field office through the processing center to effectuation to the cutting the benefit check than this agency does. What we haven't done until now, and we began doing this shortly after I was sworn in, is shifting from an annual cadence of budget inputs, the annual budget, which is how most of our governments, state, local, or federal, operate. And instead, we've shifted that to agile for government, agile for public administration, agile every 2 weeks in terms of customer service and improving the customer experience. What does that mean as a practical matter? That means that on an every 2-week basis, not every year, not every 2 years, not quarterly, but every 2 weeks, we gather about 12 of the most people around the table, the deputy commissioners who are responsible for the operations of this agency. And let's be honest, I mean, all of them are important. There's 22 deputy commissioners, but there's a reason why a jury has 12 people and not 22. So we gather as a group. It's the Deputy Commissioner for Budget and Finance, our new CIO. It is also the head of operations, our new Chief Operating Officer. But critically important at that table is Betsy Bowman, who is the head of the relatively new office here called the Office of Transformation. And it is from Betsy's office that critically important customer service research is emanating. And she is able, while the operational people are talking about workflows, she's able to talk about the customer journey and ask questions based on the customer journey. For example, people that are applying for disability claims give us pretty high ratings once they about getting an appointment, about getting into the office, about having the process explained to them. But then, in a sort of red light, green light fashion, we see from our research that we totally fall down when it comes to the time they have to wait to have their disability determination rendered by the state, what we call the DDSs, the Disability Determination Services. And so that tells us that we need to do a much better job of letting people know, even in the extended process, which has been exacerbated by the low level of staffing, we need to let people know where they stand in the process. Because in America today, if people can order a T-shirt over Amazon from China and be able to track that, how much more important is their disability determination to be able to track? Having Betsy there at the table to inject into our conversations and the critical questioning of how we do what we do and how we can do it better, I think has been one of the most fundamental changes we've made. Because whether it's the, Medallia survey on how people are treated on our really challenged 1-800 number, or calling the field offices, or any other service, that should inform just as much as the worker experience, how we do what we do and where we need to improve the most and the most urgently. Appreciate
the story bringing in all the folks together. Obviously, every 2 weeks you're bringing in 12 other people, or a subset of that 12 to continue conversation. What are you looking at from a commissioner's perspective? You want to see things get better. You want to see where obstacles are that you can help remove. I get that, but maybe go a step further down and say, what are you specifically listening for? Because I don't think a lot of people, you have so much going on that a lot of people may say, oh, well, only the big things come to your level. And that's probably, I would probably argue that's probably not true.
Oh, don't they wish? No, lots of things come to my level. In fact, within the first full month that I was here, I traveled all 9 regions. The Social Security Administration is divided into 9 regions throughout the country. There's a regional commissioner, say, for the South, for the Southwest, for California, Mid-Atlantic, et cetera. Each of them acts as their own, like, mini social service administrations delivering their services. So when I went to all of these places, I sat on the co-pilot headsets with the people in the teleservice centers. I sat down with the people for a long stretch that were interviewing customers that came in to the field offices. And we also did town halls. Not a big speech, and then I blow out of there after reading 20 pages of well-prepared remarks. But it was much more like a mayoral town hall, except this was with employees serving our customers, to understand the things that drive them crazy, that keep them from doing their job effectively and quickly, which is really, really important when we're laboring under the lowest staffing we've had in 27 years. And it's been 9 long years since Congress has even had the courtesy to give us a budget or appropriation hearing. So I came back with a lot of very actionable ideas, ideas that had been, in the absence of a commissioner with an operational background, were things that people got frustrated trying to send up. Because let's be honest, in a big organization, it becomes easier to say no than it does to say yes, especially when things are in the policy silo, things are in the law silo, things are in the cybersecurity silo, things are in the CIO silo. But having people around that table allowed us to remove barriers. Let me just give you one example. When I was sitting with a young man in a cubicle up in Boston, his name was David, and he was showing me, the very old legacy IT systems that he has to, databases that he has to go back and forth through like a trapeze artist in order to process a single claim. And before I left, he said, he said, let me just show you one more thing before you leave. And his deputy commissioner Anatoly, who is Ukrainian by descent and carries himself like a Ukrainian general, folds his arms and says, okay, you have one more thing you can show him. And he said, this is an actual SSI application. And he says, keep in mind, we've already talked to this person who's in dire need, and we've already talked to him as a human being to determine that they qualify because it's an income-based program. We have to determine that they don't have any money. And look what I have to do to process the claim. Question, do you have any money? Answer, no. Second question, do you have a checking account? No. Another click of another button. Third question, do you have a savings account? Well, hell's bells, I already told you no. Third button. He showed me 41 buttons. Like, do you have a Cayman Islands account? Do you have cash you've hidden under Granny's mattress? No, 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 no. He said, please, Commissioner, my firstborn for a no to all button. Now, that might sound like a small, simple thing. And in a sense, it is. But if you are dealing with an organization whose staffing is at a 27-year low and your customers are at an all-time high, having to spend that amount of time all across an agency, they measure things here in work years. How much how much could one person working an entire year produce, if you will, in that system? So it's the little things like that that are racking up and base hits, if you will. Every now and again, we get a double. And soon we'll start hitting triples and maybe even an occasional home run. But those are the things that, taken collectively and together, to improve customer service and to improve the worker experience. And let's be honest, they're flip sides of the same coin when you're in an entirely, human serving organization. Those are the things that are going to allow us to tackle the big three challenges that the president asked me to tackle here. One is the 1-800 number where people wait for 40 minutes, hour, sometimes an hour and a half. The second one is the time it takes for disability determinations, initial disability determinations. And the third one is the injustice we do to people through overpayments and underpayments, and our congressional mandate to recover those overpayments when we discover that they've happened. Anyway, let me pause there.
So I've asked the obvious question: are those 41 buttons down to one no to all? Is that done yet? I know it's.
In fact, thank you for making me conclude the story. We came back and with the CX team and with our CIO and also the people in operations, we were able to actually do an A/B test that we sent out there to our frontline workers to say which version of this no to all button do you prefer? So we tested that. That was a new thing. That's not something this agency has typically done. Typically, new systems take 7 years to produce. They come from headquarters, and then they roll down from the sky and land on the field offices without ever testing them with the workers. So we tested the no to all button within, as I recall, about a week, maybe 10 days. And then we deployed it within a week after the testing came back saying that the workers wanted that. And then I went into, the camera, sent out a broadcast short little video to the workers, and there was rejoicing throughout SSA, that we were listening, that we were mindful of customer experience and worker experience, that we actually asked their colleagues which one they preferred, and then we deployed it. We also did that with another thing that allowed us to, it was invented actually back in 2011 on Excel by one of our people in the Birmingham office or in the Atlanta region. And it took the 8 minutes that's typically required to process a Medicare only claim, and it shrank it to 8 seconds. and then would pause on all of those pages if an anomaly was identified by the machine that said maybe somebody elected Part D when their circumstances said they should have gotten Part B. So why did that not happen? Why could that be invented in 2011 and not be approved? Because legal had some questions. Cyber, you needed to get an authority to operate. CIO had other things above the line in their product development. And yet, that one little thing, which had gone up the flagpole over 3 or 4 commissioners and acting commissioners since 2011, never got approved until now. And we were able to turn around an ATO on that within 4 well, not the full ATO, but an authority to deploy it. And we were able to get those other people to check off. And you know, that saved 40 work years across this agency by being able to have that tool. So these are the things we're working on. We're not waiting annually to deploy them. We're deploying them every couple of weeks.
So you bring up 2 important points here. Customer experience is important, but employee experience is even just as important to create that total experience. I'd be not doing my job if I didn't ask you to comment a little bit on the telework challenges that obviously you all face. A lot of folks are finding, hey, yes, this has worked for me. Now I'm being asked to come back in the office. It's a hard balance that you are being asked to strike. We know that. What's the message when folks, what's the message you've been giving to folks when they say, well, why do we have to come back? This has worked well. Give me a little bit, because that feeds into that employee experience issue where, am I happy at my job? Am I happy to do my job every day? And then am I going to give the customer good experience in the same vein?
Sure. I'll give you the short answer. It might be worth unpacking in a longer answer because it's a very interesting history, the history of telework here. You know, one thing that we took for granted as Americans during the unprecedented, event, well, unprecedented, hadn't happened since 1918. In the pandemic, we took for granted, Jason, that the beneficiary checks kept going out from Social Security Administration, even though they were told on one single day, everybody go home, work from home, and keep all those checks going out to the then 62 million beneficiaries. Could you have imagined the cascading panic on top of the fear in America if those checks hadn't gone out? Well, how is it that they were able to do that? The reason they were able to do that is because under President Obama, and with Carolyn Colvin as the acting commissioner, now Commissioner Emerita in the office right behind me, next to me, SSA was asked by President Obama to be a pioneer, to be a leader among agencies, because back then, unlike now, we also had the highest morale of any federal agency. Now we have the lowest morale. So back then, SSA was asked by their president to advance telework, to create portable workloads that can be done from anywhere that has internet access. And for that reason and that reason only, when after a year of ending telework under Donald Trump's commissioner, they all had to then scatter again and work from home. And it was only because of that that those checks were able to keep going out. So now, like every employer, public and private after COVID, we have to figure out how to get the right balance between telework and what we are calling here core collaboration days. So ever since I made the announcement, and believe you me, there was a lot of fear about it with the new commissioner, and all the town halls, it came up all the time. When I was in Wilkes-Barre, up at a big processing center and teleservice center last week for a town hall, not one person, not one employee out of the 400 there for the town hall asked me about telework. And so we made our decision, we made our announcement in accordance with our agreement with our labor unions. We made that announcement about February 2nd. I looked in the camera, I think, right around February 1st and said, look, this is what we're doing. We're moving to core collaboration days. Many of you may think that you're more effective from home. Maybe some of you are. But the truth is, we're better together. We're stronger together. And we need each other, and we need to learn from each other and collaborate with each other in order to overcome the challenge we face right now, which is the highest number of customers and the lowest level of staffing in 27 years. So I'm here 5 days and no days of telework. uh, the commissioner's office is 4 days of on-site, 2 days of telework, and most everybody else is 3 days. And keep in mind, our field offices have been open 5 days a week, and managers were going into those offices, even during COVID, to open up the mail to make sure that people working remotely from home would be able to get those beneficiary checks out to Americans in need. So that's what we're doing on telework. It hasn't really been much of an issue, honestly, since we made that announcement. I mean, well, it was a challenge getting the cafeteria food back up. I would say that it's been more of a challenge for the people operating our cafeteria here in Woodlawn, in Baltimore, Maryland, than it has been for uh, a lot of others. A lot of inconvenience, yes. People had to make adjustments in terms of daycare and those sorts of things. It's been a challenge for our daycare center, but for the last few weeks, we've been here, and it's working better. And I honestly feel like most employees, uh, not all, but most employees are, I think, would have to admit that it's good to see their colleagues again.
I appreciate that, sir. I know a lot of consternation, probably nothing more across the government that I've seen in my 20 plus years of doing this, covering than this, beyond maybe, the pay raise, shutdowns, and the usual stuff like that. I
Well, they
know we're
need to
just,
get over it. You know, everybody else in America, the people who are in charge of our federal government, uh, everybody else is figuring out a better balance between, work and on site, and we need to as well. So I think we need to move forward. We can't be in pandemic mode forever.
I think folks are starting to understand that, but as you all know, change is hard, and it's sometimes it takes a little more time to make people more comfortable. I'm going to come back around to CX and kind of put a cap on our conversation, because I want to be aware of, I want to be cognizant of your time as well. And um, you talked about the three priorities that the president laid out for you. What's the metric that you're using in the commissioner's office to say, hey, I've made progress, we've made progress across SSA against any of those three uh, uh, initiatives, or anything else that kind of has that CX flavor to it? Is it just purely reducing time, or is it the surveys of you mentioned the FEV survey of best places to work, make sure you get increase that. You mentioned the Medilia survey. What are some of those ways that you're saying, I know we're heading in the right direction?
Yeah, we we look at several different measures. The challenge is, of course, with in a in an age and day when we're awash in data, and more of it open data, uh, there's a big difference between having lots of data and having an understanding. So we look at several different measures. We, of course, measure the customer experience across all of the lines of service delivery, if you will, which interestingly, we used to call workflows here. That's an important shift to customer service delivery. So what we are now calling the service delivery lines, we look at the customer journey. We're constantly polling on that, feedback from customers. Also on our really challenged 800 number, we have a very bad system that has never worked right from the vendor. And has a failing business intelligence at the center of it. But nonetheless, we've been able to reduce average wait times. Like I said, some people, depending on when they call, can wait for an hour or more, hour and a half. But we've reduced in a short period of time the speed to answer on that 800 number from 40 minutes to the most recent 2 weeks was 27 minutes. And it's nothing to write home about. As I said to Congress, 27 minutes is still too long. Back when we had a higher level of staffing, appropriate level of staffing, and we had a better 800 number system, we were able to answer those calls in 5 to 8 minutes. So those are some of the things that we look at. That a lot of it is the time to service delivery, and also there's other more holistic measures. For example, on the 800 number, as any call center and any well-run call center would, we look at other things like clarity of the call, the courtesy and respect, and other aspects. And we see from that, for example, that the top 2 call centers of the 20 some that we have in the country are Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and our call center in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which handles the vast majority of all of our calls from Spanish-speaking citizens of our country. So those are some of the things that we look at. Jason, before we wrap up, can I show you one chart? Yeah.
Yes, please.
What is an operational commissioner without a chart? Here's my one chart.
All right.
Like Bob Dylan here. All right. Let me have it fill up your screen.
All right.
So the rising areas of blue.
Yep.
Going across is the number of customers. We are at an all-time high. And the actuary says because of us baby boomers, we're going to go higher still. The red line represents the declining number of staff. We are a customer service organization dealing with the highest number of staff we've ever had, and also at the highest number of customers we've ever had, and the lowest number of staff. So if there's one thing that we could do that would be most impactful, and we've already made some headway on this, because Congress recently passed a budget for the remainder of the year, we were able to lift the hiring freeze. We are now hiring more people to serve our customers on the front lines. And some of them will be going to that 1-800 number. Some of them will be going to field offices. Some of them will be hired by the states in order to improve the timeliness of the disability determinations. Where, oh, by the way, we've also deployed a tool, AI, not generative AI, but the more, what do we call it? The more run-of-the-mill AI that allows us to really zero in, curate, and search large medical records. So, we are doing things every day that improve the customer experience, that take advantage of modern tools and technology. But however quickly we do that, we cannot cross that gulf between the low level of staffing and the high number of customers until Congress starts giving us an annual appropriations and budget hearing again and allows us to return to the traditional 1.2% of benefits that we always operated on before 2017 in order to serve the customers. And guess what, Jason? It's super effective for customers because other insurance agencies operate on much higher margins. Allstate, 19% of annual benefits is their overhead. Liberty Biberty, they operate on 23% of their annual benefits. And SSA, Social Security, operates traditionally, when we operated well with a high level of customer service, at 1.2%. We're now below that, but the president's budget is a solid step that'll restore us. It's a solid step in the right direction to being able to get back to that high level of customer service and the necessary staffing to provide that for FY25.
And I think the real question then comes back around is, are you going to have a budget hearing this year? Are you having conversations with lawmakers about this? Because obviously, I know you mentioned you're in Capitol Hill recently. Is that coming up in the near future?
I hope so. I mean, they're Article 1, I'm Article 2. So that's up to the elected members of Congress. But I have certainly been making the rounds. Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland is on Senate Appropriations. I met with him at length the other day. He certainly was asking the Shalonda Young, the head of OMB, questions about Social Security and how can we get them more help in order to pull them out of their declining levels of staffing. So I'm going to continue to make our case. Senator Wyden from Oregon chair of the Senate Finance Committee said, hey, if budget and appropriations won't give you a hearing, I'll give you a hearing on your budget. So it was finance, wasn't exactly appropriations, but we were finally able to make our case that, the biggest threat to this agency is actually congressional disregard. The fact that we don't even have the courtesy of a budget or appropriations hearing for what is the most popular and trusted program in the United States of America. People deserve better, Jason. The people that worked hard all their lives to pay into Social Security have not only already paid for their benefits, but they also paid for the customer service necessary to access those benefits. And if Congress, I'm not even saying, appropriates, because it's really called an allowance. If they would just allow us to use the traditional 1.2% overhead, we could restore customer service to much higher levels. We could do it very quickly. And guess what? If you're concerned about the depletion event, the so-called solvency of the trust fund, it would only advance that event by 30 days. So I really appreciate your interest in the customer experience, customer service. I invite you to come up sometime and sit in on what we call security stat, which is agile for agile government. And in this case, for the public administration of the public benefits for the people that they've already paid for and earned.
All right, sir. I'd love to do that, and I appreciate the invite. I'll get with your folks and let's see if we can arrange that. Unfortunately, though, we are out of time for this session of the CX Exchange. So let me thank my guest. Martin O'Malley is the Commissioner of the Social Security Administration. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jason.
I'm Jason Miller, and you've been watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the CX Exchange.